Welcome to your deep dive into calming anxiety and activating creativity. We'll be exploring excerpts from Martha Beck's 2025 book, Beyond Anxiety, Curiosity, Creativity, and Finding Your Purpose.
Sounds pretty ambitious, right?
It is, but that's why we're here, to really break it down. This deep dive is all about helping you understand what causes anxiety, giving you practical tools to manage it.
And ultimately unleashing your inner creative genius, which, let's face it,
We could all use a little more of that, right?
absolutely, it's more than just your typical self-help book.
Right.
It kind of reads like this fascinating blend of evolutionary biology, neuroscience, psychology.
Oh, even sociology.
I know, right?
It really dives deep into the human experience. And, so many of us are dealing with anxiety these days, but the book makes this super important distinction.
Between anxiety and fear.
Yeah, and it's the distinction that can really change how you view your own anxiety.
Fear, as the book describes it, is that immediate response to a real threat.
Like fight or flight.
Exactly, like the time the author had a close encounter with a leopard. Oh, wow.
Near her home, your heart's pounding, your senses sharpen. It's your body's way of making sure you survive. But anxiety, that's more like fear's shadow, lingering even when the danger is long gone.
It's that feeling of unease that just won't let go.
Yeah.
But why does it linger even when logically we know we're safe? The book talks about this thing called the anxiety spiral.
Oh, the spiral, yes.
Can you unpack that for us a little bit?
Imagine like a feedback loop where fear just triggers all these scary thoughts, which then, of course, just fuel more fear.
So it's like a vicious cycle.
Totally. And this spiral is powered by, get this, our left brain.
The analytical side.
Yeah, the one that tries to make sense of everything. It tries to create stories and seek control. But the irony is, this often makes the perceived threat seem way bigger.
So it actually backfires.
Totally. It backfires and makes the anxiety even worse.
So our brains are actually working against us in a way. That's both wild and a little frustrating. It is, right? The book even shares the story of a woman who would have panic attacks on airplanes,
Oh, gosh.
even though she knew statistically they were very safe.
Yeah.
It really shows how powerful that anxiety spiral can be. It just overrides logic completely. So the question is, how do we interrupt this cycle? Well, the book introduces this concept of the anxiety creature.
Okay, anxiety creature. You've got my attention. I'm picturing a little monster under the bed,
Right.
but I suspect it's more nuanced than that.
It is. Think of it as a metaphor for that primal part of our brain that just generates fear. And it's not something to be feared or banished. It's something to be understood and soothed.
So rather than fighting it, we need to almost calm it down. I'm sensing a connection to those horse whispering techniques here.
You got it. Beck actually suggests we can calm the anxiety creature using techniques inspired by, you guessed it, horse whispering.
Yeah.
Think about it. You wouldn't approach a spooked horse aggressively.
Right, you'd be gentle.
Exactly. You'd use gentle movements, a soothing voice, maybe even deep rhythmic breathing. It's the same approach with our anxiety creature. We need to be kind and patient, not forceful and judgmental.
That makes a lot of sense. And speaking of kindness, the book emphasizes what it calls kind internal self-talk, or KIST.
KIST.
It sounds a bit like a trendy new drink,
Yay.
but I'm guessing it's much more than just positive affirmations.
It is. It is. It's about genuinely addressing your anxiety creature with compassion and understanding, like you would a scared child. Remember that story about the Tibetan monk?
Oh, the one who overcame crippling anxiety.
Yes, through loving kindness meditation.
That was so powerful.
It really illustrates the potential of self-compassion when we're struggling.
Absolutely. But what about our surroundings? Does the book address how our environment impacts anxiety?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, it argues that modern society, especially what the book calls weird cultures,
Weird meaning.
it stands for Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic.
It's a mouthful.
I know, right? But those cultures often create an environment that actually triggers anxiety.
It's almost like our modern way of life isn't exactly built for inner peace.
Yeah, think about it. We're constantly bombarded with alarming news, social media feeds that fuel comparison.
The pressure to achieve, to have it all.
Right. We're surrounded by artificial environments, disconnected from nature and its calming rhythms. It's no wonder so many of us feel on edge.
It's like we're living in this perpetual state of fight or flight, even when there's no real danger present.
Exactly. And speaking of fight or flight, the book talks about this defense cascade.
Okay.
It's our natural response to any perceived threat. It's our heart wiring, trying to keep us safe.
Right.
And it involves these 5 Fs: fight, flight, fawn, freeze, and flop.
The 5 Fs. Got it.
And while these responses are, of course, essential in a truly dangerous situation, imagine them being constantly triggered in everyday life.
Oh, I can only imagine. That would be exhausting.
It is. It leads to a whole lot of anxiety.
Are there examples from the book that illustrate these responses?
Absolutely. There's Jim, who explodes with anger when he feels threatened. Classic fight response.
I know a few gyms.
Right. And then there's Emma, who freezes up in high-pressure situations. Freeze. And Kirby, who just retreats to her couch and completely disengages whenever she's overwhelmed. That's flop.
Wow. I see myself and people I know in all of those. It's almost comical, but also a bit alarming to realize how often these responses are playing out in our lives.
It is, right.
Recognizing these patterns is crucial, though, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's the first step because it helps us understand our individual anxiety triggers.
Those specific things that set off our anxiety cascade. The book also talks about these glimmers.
Ah, yes. Glimmers.
It sounds a lot more pleasant than triggers. What are they exactly, and how do they fit into all of this? So we've been talking about these triggers, the things that kind of flip that anxiety switch on for us. But then there are these glimmers. I love that word, by the way.
It's a good one.
It sounds so hopeful. What are some examples of glimmers, and how can we use them to help us?
Okay, so glimmers are like the opposite of triggers, right? They're experiences or things you see, hear, smell, things that just bring this sense of peace, joy, or calm.
I like it.
They evoke that feeling of safety, of well-being.
Yeah.
And the thing is, they're different for everyone. For the author, a glimmer could be something as simple as looking at this beautiful amethyst geode.
Oh, cool.
Or even watching a funny TikTok video.
It's funny how something so small can completely shift your mood.
Yeah.
Even change how your body feels. So how can we use these glimmers? The book mentions creating a sanctuary, right?
Yes. It's all about intentionally creating a physical space, your sanctuary, that's filled with things that basically tell your nervous system to chill out.
Relax.
Exactly. Think about it. Cozy blankets, calming scents, maybe a playlist of nature sounds, whatever brings you that sense of ease.
It's like creating your own little oasis of calm in the middle of all the chaos of everyday life. But we can't stay in our sanctuary forever. How do we take what we've learned and actually use it out in the real world?
Yeah.
Where, let's face it, triggers are going to pop up everywhere.
That's where understanding how our minds work comes in. And the book takes this really cool approach with the internal family systems model, or IFS. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, rings a bell.
Yeah.
It's the idea that we have all these different parts inside of us, like little sub-personalities. Yeah.
You got it. Imagine your inner world as this family with different members or parts that all have their own roles, their own motivations.
Okay.
You've got the managers, who are all about control, keeping things organized.
Uh-huh.
Then there are the firefighters, who jump in to put out any emotional fires, often with, let's say, not so healthy coping mechanisms.
Right.
And then you have the exiles, the wounded parts of ourselves that we tend to hide away.
I'm starting to see how this connects to anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Are you saying that even though these parts are trying to protect us, they can actually make our anxiety worse?
Exactly. The managers might be on high alert 204/7 trying to prevent anything from going wrong.
Right. Always anticipating the worst.
And the firefighters, they might be trying to put out those emotional flames with things like overworking, maybe drinking a little too much.
Or even self-sabotage.
Exactly. And then the exiles, they're holding on to all that pain from the past,
Old wounds.
which can definitely trigger some serious anxiety in certain situations.
This is a really interesting way of looking at things. The book had that great story about Penelope, the CEO who was struggling with anxiety. Didn't she use IFS to help her heal?
She did. Penelope's story is a perfect example of how powerful IFS can be. Through IFS therapy, she learned to connect with her wounded inner child, an exiled part, and offer it the compassion it needed. And through that, she was able to heal those old wounds, let go of those unhealthy coping mechanisms.
And ultimately feel less anxious.
Ex-
That's really inspiring. It shows that understanding and accepting these different parts of ourselves can really make a difference. But once we've calmed down that anxiety creature and started to heal our inner family, what's next? How do we tap into that creative potential the book keeps talking about?
Ah, great question. It brings us to the idea of activating the right side of our brain. See, the left brain, the one that fuels that anxiety spiral, is all about logic, analysis, control. The right brain, though, is the home of creativity, intuition, holistic thinking.
So it's like switching from fear-based to more of a creative, open mindset. How do we do that? Do we need to become artists or musicians?
Not necessarily. It's more about tapping into that state of curiosity and openness that allows for creative solutions and flow. The book actually highlights the author's experience of getting totally lost in drawing, where she completely transcended her anxiety.
Like being in the zone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and she entered the state of pure joy, pure creativity.
It sounds like that feeling of being totally engrossed in something you love where time just disappears.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be drawing. It could be anything that sparks that curiosity for you, allows you to get lost in the moment, gardening, cooking, building something, even just having a really deep conversation.
It's like rediscovering that childlike sense of wonder. As adults, we get so caught up in routines and worries that we forget to just be curious about the world. And speaking of curiosity, the book has this metaphor of squirrels. Can you explain that?
Ah, yes, the squirrels. They represent those passions and interests that really grab our attention and make us want to dig deeper. Remember the story of that anxious client who was completely mesmerized by the author's dog chasing squirrels?
I do.
It's such a great illustration of how curiosity can shift us out of our heads and into the present moment.
I love that. It's like our brains are wired to be fascinated by those little nuggets of novelty and intrigue. But how do we cultivate more curiosity in our everyday lives? We can't exactly chase squirrels all day, right?
Well, maybe sometimes we can. But you're right, it's about finding the things that spark that same level of intrigue for us, whether it's a new hobby, a fascinating book, or even just asking more questions in conversations. And this leads to a concept the book calls dedicated play.
Okay, dedicated play. That sounds like a fun approach to learning. How does that tie into curiosity and creativity?
Imagine that feeling of being so absorbed in something that you completely lose track of time. That's dedicated play. And the book argues that this state of dedicated play can actually speed up your learning and lead to those aha moments of sudden insight.
The eureka moments. The book had that incredible story about Wag Dodge, the firefighter who survived that wildfire by creating a fire break.
Oh, yes.
Wasn't that an example of dedicated play under pressure?
Absolutely. It's such a powerful example of how the brain, when it's in that state of flow, can come up with creative solutions that would have seemed impossible before.
It's like our brains have this hidden potential just waiting to be unlocked.
Exactly. And the book emphasizes that this isn't just about extraordinary feats like dodges. It's about finding those activities that allow us to tap into that creative flow state, whatever they may be.
So it's a reminder to bring more joy and playfulness into our learning. We often think of these things as serious and effortful, but the book suggests they can actually be fun and even lead to those moments of brilliance.
Absolutely. And this concept of dedicated play actually connects to a bigger theme the book explores, the power of purpose.
Purpose. That feels like a really big word. How does the book define purpose, and what's the link to anxiety?
Think about those times when you're so engaged in something you love that your worries just melt away. That's the power of purpose. It's about finding the things that give your life meaning, direction, a sense of fulfillment. And the book argues that finding your purpose can actually help reduce anxiety by shifting your focus away from all those fear-based motivations.
It's like when you have a clear sense of why you're doing what you're doing, the small stuff that used to make you anxious just doesn't seem as important. The book had that story about Yvonne, who left her very restrictive religious community to build a life that was aligned with her passions. Wasn't that a great example of the power of purpose?
Oh, absolutely. Yvonne's story is a reminder that we all have unique gifts and talents to share with the world. And sometimes finding our purpose means breaking free from those societal expectations or beliefs that are holding us back.
It's about being true to ourselves.
Exactly. It's having the courage to listen to your inner voice and create a life that reflects who you really are.
Such an empowering message. But what about the practical side of things? How do we actually find our purpose and bring it into our lives, especially in a world that can feel so overwhelming and uncertain?
That's where things get really interesting. The book introduces this concept of constellating an economic ecosystem. It sounds a bit complex, but it's actually a framework for creating a more fulfilling and sustainable way of working and living.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break that down for us. What is an economic ecosystem, and how do we create one?
Think about the traditional way we view work. The 9 to 5, the corporate ladder, what the book calls the iron cage.
It does feel like a cage sometimes.
Right. And it's a system that's becoming more and more unsustainable for us and for the planet.
So what's the alternative? Are we all supposed to quit our jobs and become entrepreneurs?
Not necessarily. It's more about realizing that We all have these unique skills, passions, experiences that we can weave together to create a work life that's truly aligned with our values and our purpose. And this economic ecosystem can look different for everyone. It could be multiple income streams, a blend of traditional and non-traditional work, or even creating your own niche that combines your interests and talents.
It sounds so freeing, but also a little daunting. Does the book give examples of how this works in real life?
Oh, tons. Remember Emma, who built this amazing career by following her creative impulses and adapting to the changing online world?
She was a real go-getter.
She really was. She created her own economic ecosystem by using her skills and embracing change. And then there's Rob, who combined his love for the outdoors with his interest in self-discovery.
To create his coaching business.
Yes.
It's inspiring to see people designing these unique paths for themselves.
It really is. It shows that we're not limited by the old rules anymore. We have the power to create our own opportunities and design a work life that truly fits us. And this idea of creating our own economic ecosystems actually leads into another really cool concept the book explores: awakening to mystery.
Awakening to mystery. That sounds both intriguing and a little bit intimidating. What does it mean to awaken in this context?
Think of it as this shift in your awareness, where you start to experience this really deep sense of interconnectedness and you kind of move beyond the limitations of your ego. It's recognizing that you are part of something so much bigger than yourself, and you feel this connection to everything around you, to the universe.
So the bit of a spiritual awakening, but how does that connect to anxiety and all the themes we've been talking about?
It's about recognizing that the stories we tell ourselves about safety, about scarcity, the stories that fuel our anxiety, they often come from this limited, ego-driven perspective. When we awaken to mystery, we start to see those stories from a much wider lens. We see that we are all interconnected and supported by forces we can't even fully comprehend. Do you remember the author's story about that anthropologist? The one who showed her how our consciousness can actually influence physical reality.
That story blew my mind.
It did. It's a powerful reminder that there's so much more to life than what we can see and touch. And when we open ourselves up to that mystery, we often experience a sense of peace and wonder that just washes over our anxieties.
That's beautiful. It leads perfectly to the last concept from the book: social cells and collective transformation. What exactly are these social cells, and how do they play a role in this idea of awakening to mystery?
Social cells, huh? It sounds almost scientific.
It does. What are they exactly, and how do they contribute to this collective transformation?
Okay, so imagine a world where everyone's kind of living beyond that anxiety, embracing their creativity, connecting with their purpose, you know?
Yeah.
The book suggests that those people, they naturally attract like-minded people, forming what it calls these social cells.
Interesting.
And they're not like formal organizations or anything. They're more like these organic communities based on shared values and this desire to make a positive impact.
So it's like finding your tribe, the people who get it, who share your vision for a better world. But how do these social cells actually create change on a larger scale?
Think about like the structure of the brain or even ecosystems. Everything's connected. And even these small changes can ripple out and affect the whole system.
A butterfly effect.
Exactly. Social cells work in a similar way. As more and more people in these cells awaken to their potential and start living more authentically, they inspire those around them. It creates this ripple effect that can transform communities, maybe even society as a whole.
That's a really hopeful thought. It reminds me of that saying, be the change you want to see in the world. But the world can feel so overwhelming sometimes with all the challenges we're facing. Does the book offer any guidance on how to navigate these, well, turbulent times?
It does. One of the things that really stood out to me was this idea that our deepest anxieties, they're often a message reminding us that we are safe and interconnected.
Wait, so you're saying our fear is actually pointing us towards something positive? That's a pretty interesting way of looking at it.
The book uses this beautiful analogy of planets and their gravitational pull.
Oh, I like that.
It's like our anxieties are this force that, if we understand it right, can actually pull us towards belonging and connection. Remember Adam, the astrologer?
The one who said the planet's message is, we're safe.
Yes, exactly. It's such a reassuring thought.
It is. It's so easy to get wrapped up in our daily worries and completely lose sight of that. But how do we put this into practice? How do we shift from fear to feeling safe and connected?
The book really pushes us to question the stories we tell ourselves about safety and scarcity, It encourages us to open up to a bigger worldview, one where we see how interconnected we are and the abundance all around us.
To focus on what we have, not what we lack.
Right. And it reminds us that even in the face of global challenges, there's always hope, always potential for positive change. Remember the example of Paul Hawken and his work on climate solutions.
Hawkins' book Drawdown is such a great example of how we can use our creativity to tackle even the toughest problems. It really shows that we have the power to create a better future.
And that power, it starts with each one of us. The book leaves us with a pretty clear call to action. Calm that anxiety creature, activate your creative self, and be curious. Those are the keys to unlocking your potential and making the world a better, more creative place.
It's like a roadmap to living a more fulfilling life, one that's aligned with our purpose. And it all begins with that inner work of understanding and managing our anxiety.
Absolutely. It's about remembering that we are all connected and that our individual choices can have this ripple effect that goes way beyond ourselves. When we choose to live beyond that anxiety, we're not just transforming our own lives, we're helping to create a collective awakening that can lead to a world that's more joyful, more compassionate, and ultimately more sustainable.
That's a powerful message. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want you to think about this. What sparks your curiosity? What rules are you ready to break? How can you contribute to making the world a more harmonious and creative place?
It's a journey, this journey beyond anxiety. It's all about self-discovery and creative expression. Embrace your potential, find your purpose, and trust in the magic of life.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Beyond Anxiety. We hope you've gained some insight, some inspiration to explore the incredible potential that lies within you. Until next time, keep diving deep.